Chapter 14, Superfoods, Supplements, and the Antioxidant Myth. Where there is life, there is wishful thinking. Gerald Lieberman. To nourish your brain, you need to choose foods capable of providing you with essential nutrients. To energize your brain, you need to keep your glucose and insulin levels in a healthy range. But what about protecting your brain? Is it enough to eliminate damaging ultra-processed ingredients like refined carbohydrates and avoid plant foods like wheat and cassava that harbor the most egregious toxins? Or must you also include specific foods to bolster your immune system against cancer, dementia, and other serious chronic illnesses? In other words, do some foods offer unique disease-fighting benefits that go beyond their nutrient content? Countless nutrition epidemiology studies have reported that the healthiest dietary patterns in the world are the ones that contain the greatest quantity and diversity of plant foods. Rather than questioning or testing the validity of these claims, most experimental scientists simply accept them at face value and skip ahead to ask how plant foods work their alleged magic in the human body. The unsupported belief that plant foods chivalrously shield people from harm has led serious academics, the food industry, and supplement companies on a decades-long quest to identify the ingredients within fruits and vegetables that make them uniquely beneficial to human health. At first, researchers focused their attention on a few nutrients that are more plentiful in plant foods than in commonly consumed animal foods: vitamin C, vitamin E, and beta-carotene, which we turn into vitamin A. Unfortunately, when these micronutrients were put to the test in human clinical trials, they fell flat. Vitamin C failed to lengthen the lives of people with cancer or prevent a second heart attack. Vitamin E failed to prevent heart disease and, at higher doses, shortened life. Beta-carotene increased the incidence of lung cancer in male smokers. The lesson to be learned was that vitamins are necessary, but taking more than we need can throw our systems out of balance and lead to unintended consequences. The vitamin trail having gone cold, researchers found themselves in need of a new plant superhero. In the 1990s, when new technology emerged that allowed scientists to quantify the antioxidant activity of foods and food ingredients, the belief was born that the secret to the health benefits of fruits and vegetables was that they contained special phytochemicals with powerful antioxidant properties. Since the term phytochemical simply means plant chemical, thousands upon thousands of plant molecules fall into this category. The term phytonutrient is often used interchangeably with the term phytochemical, despite the fact that only a few of them are actually essential nutrients. Phytochemicals have become the most popular theoretical answer to the question of why we are supposed to eat a wide variety of plant foods. The phytochemicals that scientists have studied most closely are polyphenols, which are found in all types of plants and come in thousands of shapes and sizes, each with its own unique purpose. Plants use polyphenols to protect themselves from the sun's radiation, defend themselves from predators, and paint their fruits beautiful colors. You may be familiar with some of the terms used to describe polyphenol families, such as flavonoids, isoflavones, tannins, and anthocyanins. Or you may have heard of specific polyphenol molecules, such as resveratrol or curcumin. In 2004, the USDA blew wind into the sails of the antioxidant theory by creating an online database that ranked specific foods according to their oxygen radical absorbance capacity, or ORAC, a laboratory measure of their antioxidant activity. Superfood and supplement marketers could then proudly point to the ORAC values of their products as evidence of their special health-promoting properties, and nutrition authorities could weave the antioxidant narrative into public policy campaigns such as Eat the Rainbow. However, in 2012, the USDA removed the database from its website due to mounting evidence that the values indicating antioxidant capacity have no relevance to the effects of specific bioactive compounds, including polyphenols, on human health. They went on to state, ORAC values are routinely misused by food and dietary supplement manufacturing companies to promote their products, and by consumers to guide their food and dietary supplement choices. The data for antioxidant capacity of foods generated by in vitro, test tube methods, cannot be extrapolated to in vivo effects in living beings. And the clinical trials to test benefits of dietary antioxidants have produced mixed results. Translation: just because a food molecule behaves as an antioxidant in a test tube does not mean it behaves as an antioxidant in the human body. Like a tree falling in a remote forest, the USDA's official takedown of the antioxidant theory made no sound. Scientists and the public have only become more enamored with polyphenols and other non-nutrient phytochemicals, unaware that their potential health benefits are rooted almost entirely in unscientific guesswork. With the exception of nutrients like vitamin C and folate, the vast majority of phytochemicals do not appear to be essential to our health. How can we tell the difference between an essential nutrient and a garden variety phytochemical? As a 2009 review article puts it, whereas the body has specific mechanisms for the accumulation and retention of vitamins, in contrast, phytochemicals are treated as non-nutrient xenobiotics, foreign substances that shouldn't be there, and metabolized so as to eliminate them efficiently. Translation: nutrients are welcomed into our bodies as honored guests and invited to stay, whereas phytochemicals are treated as unwelcome intruders to be forcibly removed from the premises. Essential nutrients are absorbed into the bloodstream and welcomed into our cells, often with the assistance of special receptors designed exclusively for them, whereas we have no such receptors for other phytochemicals. Most phytochemicals suffer from poor bioavailability, meaning they're difficult to absorb, and/or are treated as toxins by the liver, which immediately neutralizes them and ships them to the kidneys for disposal. Essential nutrients have clearly defined roles in the metabolic reactions required for human life. Therefore, if we lack any one of them, we become seriously ill or die. In contrast, the biological benefits of non-nutrient phytochemicals are purely hypothetical. Ironically, perplexed scientists striving to understand the biological relevance of phytochemicals use this lack of solid evidence in the field as a reason to consume them. For example, the article concludes, as yet, claims for benefit outstrip understanding, and some claims have clearly been based on methodology that has severe limitations. Nevertheless, we remain optimistic that there is a real possibility that some dietary polyphenols will be shown to contribute positively to health and well-being. But at the present state of knowledge, feel that the only sound advice that one can give is to have as much variety as possible so as to maximize the range of phytochemicals that are consumed. Translation: there's no solid evidence that phytochemicals are good for you, yet we continue to believe they might be, so eat as many as you possibly can, just in case. Are there any brain superfoods? If there's even a small chance that eating a rainbow of plants might protect us from dreadful diseases like dementia, why not play it safe? Marketing professionals understand our desire to take every precaution and prey on our health hopes and fears, encouraging us to view the plant foods they sell not merely as foods, sources of essential nutrients, but as superfoods with superpowers that supercharge our health. Let's take a closer look at the ones that have skyrocketed to brain food superstardom: blueberries, dark chocolate, and red wine. Blueberries burst onto the superfood scene in the mid-1990s. Upon receiving notice that wild blueberries ranked number 1 on the ORAC scale of antioxidant activity, the Wild Blueberry Association of North America, WBANA, seized on the opportunity to give their marketing strategy a makeover. The executive director of the WBANA at the time recalls that their previous strategy had been trying to sell blueberries because they tasted good inside of muffins. Health wasn't even on the radar screen. Picking through the history of this transformational moment, Outside magazine journalist Doug Behrend went on to write, "Savvy promotion of the fruit was about to help usher in an era of health food obsession that we're still living in today. No longer mere tasty treat or part of a balanced diet, blueberries would become known as cancer combatants, inflammation interceptors, defenders of cognitive function. Each berry a nutritional Navy SEAL. A superfood was born." Blueberry consumption in the United States rose by 599% between 1999 and 2014. And when the blueberry was promoted as a superfood in the UK, sales doubled in just 2 years' time. The blueberry superpower supposedly lies within purplish-blue polyphenols called anthocyanins. However, these pretty pigments suffer from poor bioavailability. Approximately 1/3 of them are destroyed in our digestive tract, and most of what we're able to absorb is rapidly eliminated from the body. A 2019 review article of 12 human randomized controlled trials concluded that studies examining the effect of blueberry consumption on cognition and mood returned mixed results, and that the research was difficult to interpret. Scientists rarely use whole blueberries such as you would see in a grocery store. Instead, they use freeze-dried blueberries, blueberry extracts, blueberry juice, and blueberry powders mixed into sugar water, sodas, juice, or milk. And these blueberry interventions aren't always compared to appropriate controls. For example, in one study, blueberry concentrate was compared to a non-alcoholic fruit cordial containing sugar and 2 artificial sweeteners. The authors concluded that while their review provided limited support for the use of blueberry interventions, this should not be interpreted as conclusive evidence for a lack of efficacy, but rather that further trials are required to resolve existing limitations. In other words, just because we can't prove it doesn't mean it's not true. So, are blueberries any healthier than other fruits? The main micronutrients in blueberries are vitamin C, vitamin K1, and manganese. But it's easy to find fruits that outperform blueberries with respect to all of these. Strawberries, for example, contain 7 times more vitamin C and half the sugar. Blueberries are lovely and delicious, but there's no evidence that they offer you any unique health benefits. Dark chocolate's rise to superfood status also began in the 1990s, when Norman Hollenberg, a professor of radiology at Harvard Medical School, observed that the Kuna Indians who lived off the coast of Panama had significantly lower rates of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, stroke, and cancer than their neighbors on the mainland. Noting that these islanders consumed a 10-fold higher amount of cocoa-containing beverages, 4 times the amount of fish, and twice the amount of fruit than their less healthy counterparts across the water, his research group zeroed in on cocoa as a candidate for further study. Finding that Kuna cocoa was far richer in certain bitter-tasting flavanols, polyphenols, than commercially available cocoa products, which incidentally had been processed to reduce flavanol content to make them more palatable to consumers, Hollenberg teamed up with the candy company Mars Inc. to develop a special flavanol-rich cocoa product to test in clinical trials. Their first study, conducted in 2003, found that flavanol-rich cocoa improved brain blood flow in healthy young adults, as well as in healthy individuals in their 70s and 80s. Since then, Mars and other chocolate manufacturers have funded numerous studies exploring the potential benefits of cocoa on thinking and memory in aging adults. It's important to understand that most studies do not use dark chocolate itself, and the few that did found no brain health benefits. Most researchers use proprietary flavanol-enriched cocoa powders mixed into a drink or capsules containing flavanol-enriched cocoa extracts. Some of these high flavanol cocoa experiments have seen improvement in cognitive tests, and others have not. We do absorb about 80% of the cocoa flavanols we consume, but we then immediately begin transforming them into other molecules, and it's unclear whether they can cross into the brain. However, they may not need to cross into the brain, because some of their benefits may be related to their ability to dilate blood vessels, which improves blood flow to the brain. The better your brain circulation, the more oxygen and nutrients your brain receives. There is no evidence yet that eating dark chocolate itself improves cognition or memory. But what if you're an optimist at heart, or just looking for a reason to eat more chocolate? The dosage of flavanols used in these studies was between 500 and 900 milligrams per day. Is there a way for you to obtain that dosage through chocolate alone? When a team of scientists at the University of Reading tested 41 chocolate bars, they discovered that their flavanol content varied tremendously, from a mere 0.1 milligrams per gram to 3.2 milligrams per gram, more than 30 times more. All of the dark chocolate bars were higher in flavanols than all of the milk chocolate bars, but among the dark chocolate bars, there was no relationship between the percentage of cocoa in each bar and its flavanol content. So there's no way for you to know how much flavanol is in your favorite bar. The only benefit to choosing bars with higher cocoa percentages is that they usually contain a lot less sugar. Remember that sugar is a powerful promoter of oxidative stress. So if you eat chocolate, be sure to choose low sugar brands. If you are lucky and your favorite brand happens to contain the highest concentration of flavanols, 3.2 milligrams per gram, it would take 156 grams of that chocolate, about 1.5 bars, depending on the size of the bar, to reach the minimum dose of flavanols used in these studies. However, if you are unlucky and your favorite brand contains the lowest concentration, 0.1 milligrams per gram, it would take 5,000 grams to reach the minimum dosage. That's 50 chocolate bars a day. A tall order for even the most ardent chocolate lover. Red wine is believed to provide cardiovascular and brain benefits due to the presence in red grape skins of resveratrol, a polyphenol with antioxidant properties, and a fungicide that grapevines produce to fight gray mold. Should gray mold dare to encroach upon a grape, resveratrol begins methodically dismantling it from the inside out until no recognizable cellular structures are visible except ghosts of mitochondria. Resveratrol joined the antioxidant party in 1997 when scientists discovered it could slow the growth of skin tumors in mice. The idea that a cancer-fighting chemical could be found in red wine was intoxicating to the public and sent red wine sales soaring. Since then, hopeful researchers have tested resveratrol against all manner of human ailments, including Alzheimer's disease, albeit with disappointing results. Several year-long clinical trials of resveratrol at 500 to 2,000 milligrams per day in people with mild to moderate Alzheimer's disease found no cognitive benefits, and one study even documented significant brain shrinkage. Notice that all of these studies use resveratrol, when what you are probably most curious about is red wine. Unfortunately, there are no studies testing the effects of red wine on people with cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's disease. There are many reasons for this, not the least of which is that the quantity of red wine you would need to drink to achieve even the lowest dosages of resveratrol used in clinical trials is 500 bottles per day. A typical bottle of Pinot Noir contains less than 1 milligram of resveratrol, and that lonely milligram of resveratrol is swimming in a sea of alcohol, a powerful promoter of oxidative stress, the very thing scientists are trying to fight with resveratrol. There is no question that binge drinking, defined as 4 or more drinks within 2 hours for women and 5 or more for men, and regular heavy drinking, defined as more than 1 drink per day for women and more than 2 drinks per day for men, is dangerous for physical and mental health. The World Health Organization estimates that the harmful use of alcohol is a causal factor in more than 200 medical conditions, and that it is responsible for more than 3 million deaths every year worldwide. But what if you keep your alcohol intake below this limit? Is it safe, or perhaps even healthy, to have a glass of red wine with dinner? Every molecule of alcohol that enters your liver is treated as a top priority toxin. As soon as your liver sees alcohol coming in, it stops tending to other important business, such as making glucose for your bloodstream and burning fat for energy, so that it can focus on ridding itself of that alcohol. These metabolic derailments can cause abnormal fat production and storage inside the liver, which can eventually lead to alcoholic fatty liver disease in people who drink too much. The process of detoxifying alcohol subjects mitochondria to damaging inflammation and oxidative stress, not only in your liver, but in your brain as well. How did alcohol, a toxic, addictive liquid, notorious for impairing coordination, judgment, and memory, become associated with dementia prevention in the first place? Essentially, because a group of nutrition epidemiologists enamored with the cuisine and culture of the northern Mediterranean had observed that the peoples of this region appeared to be healthier than Americans, noticed that red wine was part of their lifestyle, and assumed, perhaps even hoped, that the presence of red wine must be partly responsible for their better health. And so it was that when Professor Walter Willett first unveiled their vision of the Mediterranean diet food pyramid in 1993, it featured a grain-heavy triangle with a glass of red wine perched next to it. The assumption that red wine contributes to the health benefits of the Mediterranean diet, which has never been tested in human clinical trials, has been misleading scientists, policymakers, and the general public for more than 30 years. Red wine is not a brain-healthy beverage. If you have a mental health issue of any kind and you currently drink alcohol at any level, I recommend you stop drinking for at least 30 days so that you can evaluate how your current use may be affecting your mood, sleep, concentration, productivity, and overall well-being. Food as medicine? The curious case of a cruciferous crusader. How is it that molecules our bodies don't need and often explicitly reject continue to be prized as health superheroes? The confusion is understandable because ancient wisdom tells us that some plants have medicinal properties, and that is absolutely true. Plant chemicals can be simultaneously threatening and therapeutic, and sulforaphane, an isothiocyanate produced by broccoli plants, is a good example of this apparent paradox. When broccoli is sitting peacefully in a field, it contains no sulforaphane. This pungent molecule is so toxic to living cells, including broccoli cells, that the plant stores the two ingredients needed to make it in separate compartments to keep itself safe. However, if broccoli is cut or chewed, the compartments break open and the two ingredients mix together, creating the mustard bomb of an insecticide that is sulforaphane. Sulforaphane penetrates the insect's gut lining and begins dismantling the vital proteins it needs to grow and thrive. Type the word sulforaphane into any search engine, and you'll encounter pages of articles hailing its anti-inflammatory and antioxidant abilities, which enable it to kill cancer cells, protect the brain from damaging oxidative stress, and treat mental health conditions. Yet, sulforaphane itself is not an antioxidant and is powerless against inflammation. After all, it is a chemical weapon designed to damage cells, not protect them. And your body knows this. Although we absorb about 75% of the sulforaphane we encounter, as soon as it enters our cells, our own internal antioxidant system springs into action, binding, neutralizing, and ejecting it from the body as fast as possible. So within about 9 hours, it's all gone. It is well known that any benefits shown in cancer prevention studies, for example, are not directly due to sulforaphane itself, but rather to its ability to spur our own healthy defense mechanisms into action. Sulforaphane can also cross the blood-brain barrier, and emerging research suggests that it can be helpful in certain psychiatric conditions. For example, a 6-week randomized controlled trial in 66 patients with a history of heart disease found that sulforaphane tablets reduced symptoms of mild to moderate depression more than placebo. A growing number of studies also demonstrate benefits in autism spectrum conditions in children and adults. If sulforaphane extracts can reduce symptoms of autism and depression, does that mean that broccoli, eaten as a whole food, is good for your mental health? This is a common leap in logic. But just because a concentrated plant toxin can help fight existing disease doesn't necessarily mean that eating that plant food regularly makes you healthier or prevents disease. To use an extreme example, chemotherapy drugs can kill cancer cells, but that doesn't mean that taking a low dose of chemotherapy every day will prevent cancer. There are no clinical studies exploring whether eating broccoli itself on a regular basis can prevent or treat psychiatric conditions. Sulforaphane isn't a food. It's a medicine extracted from broccoli. And all medicines, whether from foods or from pharmaceutical companies, come with risks. So you should use them only if you really need them. For example, there are studies showing that sulforaphane can overstimulate defensive pathways, tip the scales too far in the wrong direction, and promote cancer growth. I suggest that the concept of food as medicine may need to be reconsidered. The purpose of food is to support normal human biological functions by providing molecules that nourish and energize us. The purpose of medicine, whether it comes from a food or a factory, is to interfere with normal human biological functions and should therefore only be considered if you have an illness that requires a targeted intervention. This blurring of the lines between food and medicine is what feeds our wishful thinking about superfoods and lines the pockets of the superfood industry. The allure of the superfood. What makes a food a superfood? In a word, marketing. There is no scientific or legal definition for the term, so anyone can attach the term to any food product without having to justify it. In fact, ambiguous health claims may enhance the appeal of superfoods, lending them an air of mystery that transcends scientific explanation. In 2022, Globe Newswire reported that the global superfoods market was expected to grow from $172 million to $288 million between 2020 and 2027. In terms of product, superfruits is the largest segment, with a share about 45%. And in terms of application, the largest application is beverage, followed by bakery and confectionery products, snacks, etc. Notice that most superfoods are not whole foods. They are sugary drinks, baked goods, and snack products made with superfood ingredients. Even if a whole food like the pomegranate did contain absorbable polyphenols capable of squelching free radicals in the human body, which they do not, juicing them into curvaceous 8-ounce bottles and then adding 32 grams of sugar, a powerful promoter of oxidative stress, more than drowns out their alleged superpowers. Despite decades of scientific dead ends, we continue to believe that colorful plant foods can rescue us from dementia and other modern diseases driven largely by poor quality diets and other unhealthy aspects of our modern lifestyle. On some level, we must know that the secret to robust brain health doesn't lie in eating more chocolate and drinking more wine. But if it's not true, we're going to have to face some difficult realities and make some hard choices. We want to believe in the power of addition, adding a puckery fruit like cranberry, a bitter vegetable like kale, or a pill containing extracts of all the fruits and vegetables you don't have time to eat is easy. Addition feels proactive, positive, and empowering. But the truth is that protection is not about addition. It's about subtraction. We already know a great deal about what causes excess inflammation and oxidative stress. And the prime dietary suspects are high refined carbohydrate intake, refined vegetable oils, alcohol, and overeating in general. First, do no harm. Instead of shifting your cells into antioxidant overdrive by adding a phytochemical like sulforaphane, why not try quieting the inflammation and oxidative stress by removing those prime suspects first? The truth shall set you free. I fully support using medicines and supplements to treat the symptoms of existing disease when necessary. But food-first approaches that directly address root causes of disease whenever possible are much preferred. Placing your faith in superfood myths may only serve to enable you to continue eating and drinking things that are working against you. So my advice to you is this. Choose whole foods that you enjoy eating that nourish and energize your brain, and avoid foods that damage your cells and your metabolism. If you choose to eat chocolate or drink wine, be careful with quantities, be mindful of the risks, and do so with the understanding that these are indulgences, not healthy habits. We have been conditioned for decades not only to give plant foods the benefit of the doubt, but to give plant foods more credit than they deserve. This plant-biased mindset makes it difficult for us to see things as they really are, enabling both the superfood movement and the plant-based diet movement to flourish in the absence of scientific evidence, to the detriment of our collective mental health. Chapter 15. The Plant-Based Brain, Going Out on a Limb. To meet 2050 challenges for quality protein and some of the most problematic micronutrients worldwide, animal source foods remain fundamental. Martin Cohen and Frédéric Laloux, The Dark Side of Plant-Based Food. Given widespread beliefs that plant foods fight disease and animal foods cause disease, it is not surprising that plant-based diets are increasingly viewed as the healthiest diets we can eat. Yet, in most cultures, for most of recorded history, diets containing a mixture of minimally processed animal and plant foods were the norm. Vegetarian diets were unusual, as were plant-free carnivore diets, and vegan diets would have been fatal since vitamin B12 supplementation wasn't available prior to 1952. When we stand back and look objectively at the nutritional and biological differences between plant and animal foods, it's easy to appreciate that animal foods are nutritionally superior to plant foods and less likely to cause us harm. Therefore, making them the centerpiece of a mixed diet would seem to be the safest and most reliable way to keep ourselves healthy. Yet, taking a plant-based approach to nutrition is increasingly recommended by influential health organizations such as the American Heart Association and the World Health Organization as the best strategy for protecting human health. The medical mainstreaming of plant-based dietary patterns is deeply troubling, as some of these patterns are sure to have serious unintended consequences for public mental health. I emphasize some of them because the term plant-based means different things to different people. This ambiguity is problematic, especially when used in the context of medical advice, where clarity is key. The term plant-based encompasses a wide variety of dietary patterns, from Mediterranean diets that allow all animal foods, including lean red meat, to vegetarian diets that only allow dairy and/or eggs, to vegan diets that contain no animal foods whatsoever. From a biological perspective, there is a world of difference between vegetarian diets and vegan diets, so it is critical to make the distinction between them, which the term plant-based fails to do. For our purposes, I will use the word vegetarian to mean mixed diets that include dairy and/or eggs, the word vegan to mean diets that contain no animal foods at all, and the term near vegan to describe any dietary pattern that is too low in animal foods to meet nutritional requirements without supplementation. Of the 1.5 billion people in the world who eat a vegetarian diet, only 5% do so by choice. The rest don't eat meat because they can't afford it. This sliver of voluntary vegetarians includes people who have long avoided meat for religious or cultural reasons, such as in India, where approximately 30% of the population follows a vegetarian diet. It also includes a growing segment of the population in Western countries where secular vegetarianism is becoming more popular. Surveys suggest that 5% of adults in the United States, the UK, and Germany, and 8% of Canadians now identify as vegetarian. More than 10% of people living in Australia, New Zealand, Israel, and Sweden now identify as vegetarian or vegan. Vegan and near-vegan diets are capturing the hearts and minds of consumers concerned about public health, animal welfare, and the environment. Google search data reflects these trends. While interest in vegetarianism has remained steady since 2004, interest in vegan diets began rising in 2016. There are many reasons why people choose not to eat animal foods. Most college students I worked with who followed vegetarian or vegan diets told me that they chose to do so not for health reasons, but for compassionate reasons, because they cared about the health and well-being of animals and the planet. Since mainstream medical advice supports their choices by recommending vegetarian and vegan diets for optimal health, they felt unconflicted. Better health was the icing on the cake, not something to be sacrificed for higher ideals. Unfortunately, good physical and mental health is precisely what is at stake, because the science behind plant-based diets says something very different than what we have been led to believe it says. Plant-based diets are not evidence-based diets. There is currently no scientific evidence available to help us understand how vegetarian and vegan diets affect psychiatric conditions. However, there have been quite a few clinical trials demonstrating that vegan and vegetarian diets can indeed benefit other conditions like type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Since improving metabolic and vascular health could also improve mental health, it's worth taking a closer look at this research. While there are many studies to choose from, some of the best known and most highly cited work in this field has been conducted by physician researchers Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, and Dr. Neil Barnard, all of whom have written popular books recommending the specific diet plans they have each studied. You may also be familiar with Professor T. Colin Campbell's book, The China Study, which argues that animal protein causes cancer and that people should therefore eat a whole foods vegan diet. Since the information in his book is based on nutritional epidemiology rather than human clinical trials, I will not analyze its findings here. Dr. Dean Ornish's 1990 lifestyle heart trial demonstrated that a very low-fat vegetarian diet reduced the degree of stenosis, or narrowing, in the coronary arteries of people with heart disease, leading to claims that his program reverses heart disease. This study was a 1-year randomized controlled trial in which 28 patients with coronary artery disease were prescribed a diet of grains, legumes, vegetables, fruit, egg whites, and non-fat dairy products. They were also told to avoid added fats, oils, and simple sugars, to limit alcohol and caffeine, exercise 30 minutes a day, practice daily stress management techniques, attend support groups, stop smoking, and take a B12 supplement. This group was compared to a control group of 20 patients who were not given any diet or lifestyle advice. After 1 year, the degree of stenosis in the Ornish diet group had decreased by 2.2%, a significant improvement compared to the control group in which stenosis had worsened by 3.4%. Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn is perhaps best known for demonstrating that people could arrest and reverse the progression of coronary artery disease with a very low-fat vegetarian diet. In his 1995 Arrest and Reverse study, which lasted more than 5 years, 22 patients with severe triple vessel coronary artery disease, more than 50% blockage, were prescribed a vegetarian diet of grains, legumes, vegetables, fruit, skim milk, and non-fat yogurt that excluded oils and limited alcohol and caffeine. Patients were also prescribed cholesterol-lowering medications and a daily multivitamin, and attended regular support groups. Among the 7 patients who completed the trial, there was a significant reduction in stenosis of 7% on average. Dr. Neil Barnard has conducted numerous clinical trials of a vegan diet in a variety of health conditions, including type 2 diabetes and obesity. The diet he uses in his research excludes dairy and eggs, but is otherwise identical to the Ornish and Esselstyn diets. He recommends favoring low glycemic foods and taking a B12 supplement, but does not ask patients to exercise or make other lifestyle changes. Dr. Barnard claims his diet reverses type 2 diabetes because it lowers hemoglobin A1C, a reflection of average blood sugars over the previous 3 months. The internationally recognized definition of type 2 diabetes remission is the ability to maintain hemoglobin A1C below 6.5% for longer than 3 months without diabetes medication. In Barnard's 74-week randomized controlled trial of 99 patients, the 49 who followed the vegan diet did fare better than those following conventional dietary advice, but none lowered their hemoglobin A1C levels into the non-diabetes range. By contrast, low-carbohydrate diets have been shown in large studies to place type 2 diabetes into remission. When Indiana University obesity medicine specialist Dr. Sarah Hallberg and collaborators at Virta Health placed 349 patients on a low-carbohydrate diet for 1 year, average hemoglobin A1C levels fell from 7.6 to 6.3. British National Health Service physician Dr. David Unwin showed similar success with 186 patients on a low-carbohydrate diet. Hemoglobin A1C levels fell from 7.9 to 6.4, with 51% of patients achieving remission over a nearly 3-year period of observation. These were not randomized controlled trials, but they do indicate it is not necessary to remove animal foods from your diet or eat a low-fat diet to put type 2 diabetes into remission. Fat and protein don't raise blood sugar. Carbohydrates do. The reductions in hemoglobin A1C that Dr. Barnard observed were likely related to the avoidance of refined carbohydrates, as he advised participants to favor low glycemic index foods such as beans and green vegetables. What the Ornish, Esselstyn, and Barnard studies tell us is that diet and lifestyle changes can make a positive difference in your cardiovascular and metabolic health, and that is an empowering message. Where the message gets muddled is that these studies are frequently pointed to as evidence that removing meat from the diet is what makes the difference. However, none of these plans simply removes meat from the diet. They also remove almost all of the fat, including vegetable oils, all of the refined carbohydrate, and all of the processed foods. In many cases, numerous other changes were also implemented, such as exercise, smoking cessation, and cholesterol-lowering medication. It is therefore impossible to know whether the absence of meat had anything to do with the health benefits of any of these plans. These studies are not exceptions. I am not aware of any human clinical trial of any health condition that removes animal foods without changing other key aspects of the diet. This means that there is currently no scientific evidence that simply removing animal foods from the human diet brings any health benefits whatsoever. Until such studies are conducted, we are left to wonder, what if the health advantages of whole foods, plant-based diets have everything to do with eating whole foods and nothing to do with eating plant-based. In my 13 years as a college psychiatrist, it was common to meet students who ate processed foods vegan diets, but rare to meet students who ate whole foods vegan diets, or whole foods diets of any kind for that matter. Food culture on most college campuses is a travesty. Other than avoiding animal foods, students choosing vegan diets ate the way most other students did: enormous sweetened coffee drinks, granola bars, sugary smoothies, pasta, muffins, chips, chocolate, energy drinks, and cookies all day long and well into the night. Combining the nutrient deficits of an undersupplemented, poorly planned vegan diet with the inflammation, oxidative stress, and high insulin levels that come with the standard American diet is a surefire prescription for brain damage and dysfunction. Despite faithfully avoiding all animal foods, none of these kind, talented, ambitious young people enjoyed good mental or physical health. Obesity, acne, tooth decay, type 2 diabetes, thinning hair, iron deficiency, chronic pain, depression, anxiety, ADHD, and overeating disorders were all too common among these young adults in the prime of their lives. Having studied this subject for more than 15 years, and having worked with thousands of patients, one thing is clear. Of all the reasons to choose a vegan diet, better mental health is not one of them. Beyond B12, nutritional and mental health risks of vegan diets. It is impossible to meet the brain's nutritional requirements through plant foods alone. All respectable health organizations are unanimous in recommending B12 supplementation for vegan diets because all plant foods lack B12. In fact, strictly speaking, B12 is the only essential nutrient missing from all plant foods. However, the whole truth is that nutrient deficiency issues in vegan diets go well beyond B12. While nutrition authorities around the world disagree wildly about which nutrients other than B12 may require supplementation, most authorities, including those that strongly advocate for near-vegan and vegan diets, do acknowledge that additional risks exist. In 2019, an international group of 37 scientists led by Professor Walter Willett published an influential report entitled Food in the Anthropocene, the Eat Lancet Commission on Healthy Diets from Sustainable Food Systems. This commission's task was to devise a strategy that could achieve an environmentally sustainable and optimally healthy diet for the world's people by 2050. The group concluded that the best way to accomplish this goal would be to reduce the amount of animal food in the global human diet to as little as 0 grams per day. In their report, the authors note that strict vegan diets require B12 supplementation, but they also go on to write that their diet plan may not meet the iron and omega-3 fatty acid needs of pregnant women, nor the iron needs of teenage girls. They recommend animal foods for malnourished populations and recommend breastfeeding for children under 2 years of age, implying that their diet plan is not suitable for children under 2. They acknowledge that animal proteins are of higher quality than most plant protein sources, and that high-quality protein is particularly important for growth of infants and young children, and possibly in older people losing muscle mass later in life. Unfortunately, as is too often the case when reading literature about vegan diets, identifying these important exceptions and precautions requires close reading, the parsing of convoluted rhetoric, and some special nutrition knowledge. Eat Lancet's influential report is just one example of the common practice of recommending near-vegan and vegan diets while minimizing the nutritional risks. It is quite another for medical professionals to recommend it for health reasons without explicitly calling attention to its health risks and giving clear, detailed advice about menu planning and supplementation. Just as with any other piece of medical advice, we physicians must present both the risks and the benefits to our patients so they can make an informed choice. To do otherwise is medically irresponsible and potentially dangerous. In 2022, researchers in the Netherlands conducted a systematic review of dozens of nutrient measurement studies and found that vegans were more likely to be deficient in vitamin B12, vitamin D, zinc, EPA, DHA, and iodine. More than 90% of vegans had iodine deficiency. Vegans were also more likely to have low bone density, and vegan women were more likely to have iron deficiency. The brain requires every essential nutrient to function properly. So, if you have a deficiency in any one of them, your mental health could suffer. How a nutrient deficiency will affect you depends on many factors, including how old you are when the nutrient deficiency begins, how severe the deficiency is, how long it lasts, and what other deficiencies and health problems you have. If a deficiency begins at an early age, persists for a long time, or is very severe, irreversible damage could occur. In your accompanying PDF, you will find a table listing the mental health risks of common nutrient deficiencies. But to briefly summarize, the mental health risks of vitamin B12 deficiency include psychosis and cognitive impairment. Iron deficiency and zinc deficiency both increase risk for ADHD, depression, and psychosis. Iodine deficiency places people at risk not only for hypothyroidism, but also for anxiety disorders. And deficiencies of the omega-3 fatty acids EPA and DHA can contribute to ADHD, autism, mood disorders, psychotic disorders, and dementia. The relationship between most nutrients and most psychiatric disorders is still unclear, because without the option of conducting human clinical trials, the best we can do is to observe associations and guess about causation. The most important exception to this rule is B12 deficiency, where we commonly see clear reversal of severe psychiatric symptoms with supplementation. Numerous case reports and studies find that vitamin B12 deficiency can lead to a wide variety of serious psychiatric issues, from depression and psychosis to delirium and dementia. For example, when researchers in Pakistan examined 100 young adults who had been eating a lacto-vegetarian diet, a vegetarian diet that includes dairy but not eggs, since childhood, and compared them to 100 young omnivores, they found that 51 of the vegetarians had B12 deficiency, compared to only 3 of the omnivores. To make matters worse, 31 of them had depression, 11 had psychosis, and 7 had memory impairment. Depression was more than twice as common, and psychosis was more than 3 times as common among the vegetarians. In an extreme example, a young mother who had gradually become deficient in B12 while following a vegan diet developed severe dementia to the point that she lost the ability to care for herself and her child and could only utter one word at a time. B12 deficiency can lead to permanent brain damage if left untreated for too long, but thankfully, with B12 injections, she completely recovered in a matter of months. If B12 is the only nutrient missing from all plant foods, why isn't B12 supplementation enough? Remember, just because a plant food contains a nutrient doesn't mean you can access it. Some plants contain anti-nutrients that interfere with nutrient absorption. Some plant nutrients must be converted into human-friendly forms before we can use them. And some of the nutrients that plants lack are conditionally essential. There are at least 15 vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and other nutrients that are more difficult or impossible to obtain from plants, including some that receive too little attention, such as vitamin K2, zinc, choline, and iodine. You will find a table listing all 15 of these elusive nutrients in your accompanying PDF. Unfortunately, there is little consensus among nutrition authorities about which, if any, of these nutrients need to be supplemented on a vegan diet, because it might be possible, under certain circumstances, with careful planning, to meet your requirements for them by eating plants alone. These nutritional gray areas open the door to the potential for serious nutrient deficiencies, especially for people who have higher nutrient needs, such as people with gastrointestinal conditions that affect nutrient absorption, people over 60, people who are recovering from illness, injury, or surgery, people with chronic illness, and people who don't have access to enough nutritious plant foods or quality supplements. All too often, these risks are overlooked, downplayed, or dismissed by nutrition authorities, creating confusion and controversy around supplementation requirements. These important considerations are what I call the ifs, ands, and buts of vegan diets. My position is that a vegan diet, while not optimal, might be safe if you plan your meals primarily around nutritious whole foods and you supplement wisely, but not if you are pregnant, breastfeeding, or still growing. The first 1,000 days. One of the greatest gifts a mother can give a child is a big, beautiful, healthy brain. If we want to make a dent in our global mental health crisis, we don't just need more effective ways to treat mental illnesses. We need to find ways to prevent them from occurring in the first place. It is during the first 1,000 days of life, between conception and age 2, that critical milestones in brain development occur. This is the single most important construction project of our lives, and every phase of the process is timed right down to the day. If precisely the right mix of nutrients isn't available precisely when needed, major problems can ensue, ranging from intellectual disabilities to serious birth defects to spontaneous miscarriage. Advanced parental age, environmental pollutants, socioeconomic deprivation, and substance use can all cause brain development to go awry as well. But inadequate nutrition is the simplest and arguably the most important of these risk factors to address, because food provides the basic building blocks needed to grow a healthy brain. The good news is that if you have access to healthy foods and you have accurate information about what a healthy diet is, you can feed your baby the ingredients needed to lay the foundation for a lifetime of excellent mental health. But in order to succeed in this task, you must include animal foods in your diet. Not only is it easier for new moms to nourish new brains if they include animal foods in their own diets, it is virtually impossible to meet babies' nutritional needs without them. The nutrients of most concern during pregnancy, meaning those required in the largest quantities and hardest to obtain from standard modern diets, are choline, vitamin D, DHA, EPA, folate, iodine, and iron. Future mothers eating a vegan or vegetarian diet also need to add vitamin B12 and taurine to this list. With the exception of folate, all of these micronutrients are either harder to find in plant foods than commonly consumed animal foods, or don't exist in plant foods at all, placing babies of vegan and vegetarian mothers at significant risk for nutritional deficiencies. For example, the World Health Organization and UNICEF recommend that all infants receive breast milk and only breast milk for at least the first 6 months of life, and that they continue on breast milk, in combination with other foods if desired, until at least age 2. However, when researchers analyze breast milk from well-nourished mothers following vegan and vegetarian diets, they find it tends to be too low in B12, DHA, EPA, and taurine, so these must be supplemented. It is difficult enough to find adequate quantities of these irreplaceable animal-source nutrients in a typical omnivorous diet, let alone in near-vegan and vegan diets, which intentionally minimize or eliminate animal foods. Yet, despite these serious concerns, national guidelines in the United States, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand all either explicitly support vegan diets for pregnant and breastfeeding women or do not directly address the issue. And those in support vary substantially in their supplementation recommendations. Given how complicated an undertaking it can be to learn about, properly plan, adequately supplement, and medically monitor a vegan pregnancy, and given the increased nutritional requirements of developing infants, children, and teens, some national health organizations, such as the German Nutrition Society, the European Society for Pediatric Gastroenterology, Hepatology, and Nutrition, and the Royal Academy of Medicine in Belgium, explicitly advise against vegan diets during pregnancy, breastfeeding, childhood, and adolescence. The Royal Academy of Medicine in Belgium issued a compelling position statement on this issue in 2018, writing in part, "It is not medically recommended and even prohibited to subject a child, in particular during periods of rapid growth, to a potentially destabilizing diet, justifying supplements, and requiring frequent clinical and biological checks. This feeding concept no longer resembles a conventional diet, but a form of treatment that is unethical to impose on children." Let's see how the nutrients of most concern contribute to the miracle of brain development, so you can see how pivotal they are to the process and appreciate what could go wrong without them. A brain is born. During week 3 of pregnancy, before many women even realize they are pregnant, an unassuming little sheet of nerve cells quietly starts expanding and curling in on itself. By day 27, its edges have met and zipped themselves together to form a tube. The brain will begin bulging out of the top of this tube by week 6, and the rest of the tube will become the spinal cord. Within 3 short weeks, the foundation for baby's entire central nervous system has been poured. This tight timeline depends on vitamin B12 and folate, which work together to make copies of new DNA molecules for cells that are busily multiplying to create these brand new structures. If either of these vitamins is in short supply during the first month of pregnancy, the neural tube will be left unfinished, resulting in miscarriage or disfiguring neural tube defects such as spina bifida. Women following vegan and vegetarian diets are not at higher risk for folate deficiency, but B12 deficiency is much more common in this group, and pregnancy further depletes reserves, so supplementation is critical. Helping to direct the brain's development throughout the entire pregnancy is thyroid hormone, which is made with iodine. Iodine is so crucial to normal brain development that severe deficiency, which was widespread before iodized salt programs, leads to serious developmental disabilities. Mild to moderate deficiency, which is still common even in Europe and the United States, can lead to lower IQ scores and subtle intellectual disabilities. Vegan diets increase risk for iodine deficiency because most plant foods are low in iodine. As the brain rounds the corner into the third trimester, it enters a marathon of intensive brain building that continues until age 2. Brain cells busily multiply to form new structures, migrate to new destinations, and myelinate new axons to establish secure communication pathways. This whirlwind of activity requires membranes, lots and lots of membranes. To prepare for its long growth spurt, the brain begins hoarding massive quantities of DHA and choline to insert into the membranes of every new cell it creates. The developing baby soaks up 40 milligrams of DHA per day, more than 10 times the amount we absorb as adults. New synapses, new myelin, and new mitochondria all need DHA. But this invaluable omega-3 fatty acid isn't just a membrane building block. It also serves as a signaling molecule to guide new neurons to their assigned positions within the cortex. And it has powerful anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties that protect the vulnerable new brain from damage. Remember, plant foods contain absolutely no DHA. The only omega-3 fatty acid they contain is ALA, which we struggle to convert into DHA. Even pregnant women, who are better at transforming ALA into DHA than anyone else, can't make enough DHA for their ravenous babies' brains. Studies consistently find that compared to mothers who eat omnivorous diets, DHA levels are 1/3 to 2/3 lower in the umbilical cord blood, breast milk, and babies of vegetarian and vegan mothers. These observations have led most experts to agree that ALA alone is not sufficient to meet the developing brain's requirements for DHA. The long-term risks of early life DHA deficiency are potentially devastating. We know that infants born prematurely, who miss out on the full supply of DHA they're supposed to receive during the third trimester of pregnancy, grow up with poorly connected, undermyelinated brain cell networks. Researchers at the University of Cincinnati have observed that the brains of people with ADHD, mood disorders, and psychotic disorders are similarly underdeveloped. Like an artist who runs out of paint, if DHA falls short during the third trimester, the developing human brain must leave its most prized masterpiece, the cortex, unfinished, just as it must in babies born prematurely who haven't had the luxury of completing a full term of pregnancy. Rolling out new membranes also requires copious quantities of choline, which explains why fetal choline levels during the third trimester are nearly 6 times higher than typical adult levels. Without choline, the brain can't make acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter central to learning and memory, nor phosphatidylcholine, one of the most vitally abundant molecules in our membranes. Choline also regulates genes that help direct brain development. A shortage of choline poses problems for the entire brain, but is particularly perilous for the hippocampus, the brain's learning and memory center, which relies heavily on choline to form and function properly. Since choline wasn't recognized as an essential nutrient until 1998, we understand very little about how choline deficiency during pregnancy plays out in children and adults. But emerging research suggests it may contribute to risk for autism, schizophrenia, and cognitive impairment. Many plant foods are low in choline, so vegan diets increase risk for choline deficiency. Despite its critical importance, more than 90% of pregnant women do not get enough choline regardless of dietary preferences, and most prenatal vitamins still do not contain choline. Brain building also demands energy, which means lots of electron transport chains busily churning out ATP. Iron deficiency during pregnancy can cause irreversible damage to the brain because these tiny generators can't operate without iron. The energy-hungry hippocampus is particularly vulnerable to iron deficiency in pregnancy, which can lead to lifelong memory problems. Babies born to iron-deficient mothers show less complexity in their gray matter networks, have more trouble recognizing their mother's voices, and have a higher risk for ADHD. An analysis of over 500,000 children in Sweden found that children of mothers who were diagnosed with iron deficiency anemia in the first 30 weeks of pregnancy were 2 to 3 times more likely to have autism spectrum disorders and intellectual disabilities. The form of iron found in plant foods is less bioavailable, so vegetarian and vegan women of reproductive age tend to have less iron stored in their bodies. And finally, just as insulin is a master regulator of growth, so is vitamin D. Vitamin D is a steroid hormone needed from day one of pregnancy to orchestrate the complex process of brain development, fight damaging oxidative stress, and ensure proper function of the brain's immune system. During the 3rd trimester, it is heavily involved in bone building, so mom must supply baby with ever-increasing amounts of vitamin D as pregnancy progresses. Baby's vitamin D levels are supposed to double in the 1st trimester and then double again approaching the 3rd trimester. Plant foods don't contain vitamin D, and the form found in mushrooms and yeast, which are technically not plants, is vitamin D2, which is less effective at raising and maintaining our vitamin D levels than vitamin D3, the form found in animal foods. Vitamin D deficiency is common in general, but vegans and vegetarians are even more likely to be deficient and have higher rates of osteoporosis. While several nutrient deficiencies during pregnancy have been linked to a possible increased risk for autism, the evidence is strongest for vitamin D deficiency, probably because of vitamin D's critical role in directing brain development throughout pregnancy. Vitamin D, sunshine, and insulin resistance. Vitamin D doesn't have to come from the diet at all, because we can make it ourselves if we get enough sunshine. In fact, even though the brain's need for vitamin D remains high after delivery, babies' vitamin D levels drop sharply after birth because after 9 months in darkness, Mother Nature expects babies to be exposed to sunlight so they can start making their own vitamin D. But modern indoor lifestyles and fear of skin damage mean many babies spend less time in the sun. As little as 30 minutes of midday sunlight per week may be sufficient, although those with darker skin or who live far from the equator may need longer sun exposure time. Lack of sun exposure is just one of the reasons why so many moms and infants are deficient in vitamin D. Another major force we all have to contend with is insulin resistance, which is so tightly tied to vitamin D deficiency that we used to think vitamin D deficiency caused insulin resistance. But we are beginning to see that the relationship may be the other way around. Insulin resistance could be a contributing cause of vitamin D deficiency because insulin resistance interferes with our ability to activate and respond to vitamin D. The scarcity of these precious molecules in our modern diet may help to explain why prenatal vitamins are recommended for every future mom, regardless of dietary preferences. Unfortunately, the quality of prenatal vitamins varies greatly, and most still don't contain everything you need. So attention to nutrition is still very important. Furthermore, as leading prenatal nutrition expert Lily Nichols, RDN, warns, sadly, if you follow conventional prenatal nutrition advice, you're almost guaranteed to be eating a nutrient-deficient diet. Therefore, if you are planning a pregnancy, be sure to shore up your diet with nutrient-rich animal foods from at least 6 months prior to conception until you've finished breastfeeding. Why take the unnecessary risk of withholding nutrient-rich animal foods during the brain's most critical window of development. Given how little we still know about optimal nutrient requirements during pregnancy and what the long-term psychiatric risks of nutrient deficiencies are, it would be wise to err on the side of caution. Complete coverage of these critical topics is well beyond the scope of this audiobook. So, regardless of your dietary preferences, if you are pregnant, breastfeeding, or planning a pregnancy, I highly recommend you read Real Food for Pregnancy by Lily Nichols for expert guidance about proper nutrition and supplementation. Her comprehensive book includes thoughtful, well-researched advice for omnivores and vegetarians alike. Finally, if you are considering a vegetarian or vegan pregnancy, please also consult with a medical professional with deep knowledge and experience in this area for personalized advice about supplementation, dietary planning, and clinical monitoring well before conceiving. How to optimize vegetarian and vegan diets for better brain health. If you are a non-pregnant adult and you eat a vegan or vegetarian diet, I will offer some suggestions to help you optimize your diet for better mental health. Even if you follow these suggestions, you may still need to supplement. But since supplementation advice will vary depending on your food choices, health circumstances, and other factors, please consult with a healthcare professional with deep knowledge and experience in this area for personalized guidance about supplements. Protein, amino acids. Focus on eggs, nuts, and tofu. Many plant proteins do not contain optimal quantities and proportions of all 9 essential amino acids, with lysine and methionine being hardest to find. However, you can still meet your amino acid needs on a vegetarian or vegan diet if you plan properly. Vegetarians, eat eggs regularly. If you don't eat eggs, dairy products will need to be your source for animal nutrients. Just keep in mind that they can be more problematic. Refer to Chapter 11. Vegans. Legumes, nuts, and seeds are your richest whole food sources of amino acids. Refer to Chapter 12 for information about how to reduce toxins and anti-nutrients in legumes. Calcium-set tofu is a complete protein with excellent bioavailability and has the added benefits of being low in carbohydrate and high in calcium. Other complete protein sources are quinoa, buckwheat, a gluten-free grain, and corn, a protein isolated from fungi. Avoid flours of all kinds, processed cereal products, and grains that contain gluten, wheat, barley, rye, and triticale. If you use plant milks, choose unsweetened varieties that are free of vegetable oils. Avoid processed meat substitutes, especially those made with vegetable oils, sugar, and other industrially processed ingredients. Fats. Focus on fatty fruits and nuts. Avoid buttery spreads, vegetable oils, and trans fats. Obtain your healthy fats by eating whole plant foods whenever possible: avocados, olives, palm fruit, nuts, seeds, and coconut. Healthier added fats include olive oil, avocado oil, palm fruit oil, cocoa butter, sesame oil, and cold-pressed nut oils. Carbohydrates. Focus on fruits and vegetables. If you do not have insulin resistance yet, you can enjoy fruits and starchy vegetables in your diet. If you want to keep your metabolism healthy, choose low glycemic varieties, as listed in Chapter 7, and strictly avoid refined carbohydrates. If you have insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes, I encourage you to consider a low-carbohydrate diet, in which case minimizing or even eliminating grains, starchy legumes, fruits, and starchy vegetables would become important. It isn't difficult to construct a low-carbohydrate vegetarian diet, but low-carbohydrate vegan diets pose special challenges. Nevertheless, low-carbohydrate vegan diets are possible if you emphasize lower carbohydrate protein sources such as soy, macadamia nuts, almonds, and hemp seeds. Better brain health for everyone. The next and final section of this audiobook lays out the 3 dietary strategies I use most often in my clinical work, and the core of all 3 of them is animal foods. However, if including some animal foods in your diet isn't an option for you, the suggestions we've just reviewed together will go a long way toward helping you better nourish, protect, and energize your brain. I would still encourage you to listen to the final chapters, as there are additional brain food rules worth knowing about, as well as important information about ketogenic diets and food sensitivities that apply to everyone, regardless of dietary preferences. Part 4. Hope is on the menu. Chapter 16. The Quiet Diet Approach. Now comes the time for a new beginning. We've been fed the wrong information about nutrition for generations, which means that, if you're like most of us, you've been feeding your brain improperly all your life. The silver lining around this cloud is that you have no idea how much better you could feel if you ate a brain-healthy diet. Get curious. You owe it to yourself to discover what's possible. Your outlook on life could change in ways you wouldn't have imagined. Brain food rules. Now that you've prepared yourself to change your diet, which dietary changes are most worth making and why? Let's return to our touchstones of nourish, protect, and energize, and create a fresh new set of brain food rules grounded in biology instead of ideology, questionnaire-based guesswork, or wishful thinking. A brain-healthy diet must nourish the brain by providing all essential nutrients. This means including animal foods because they are nutrient-rich, and avoiding plant foods highest in anti-nutrients, especially grains and legumes. A brain-healthy diet must protect the brain by excluding foods that contain damaging ingredients. This means following whole foods principles, avoiding refined carbohydrates, vegetable oils, and alcohol because they cause inflammation and oxidative stress, and avoiding high-toxin plant foods such as cassava, which can be toxic to mitochondria and the thyroid gland, flaxseed, which is potentially toxic to mitochondria, and most nightshades, because they are toxic to the nervous system. I would also encourage you to consider eliminating all dairy products. Most importantly, listen to your body and limit any food that causes you physical or psychological side effects, such as digestive distress, insomnia, fatigue, or brain fog, as symptoms such as these may indicate inflammation. A brain-healthy diet also must energize the brain in ways that protect brain metabolism over the lifespan by keeping blood glucose and insulin levels in a healthy range. This means avoiding refined carbohydrates, avoiding dairy protein powders, and customizing carbohydrate quantity to achieve healthy glucose and insulin levels. Practice whole food principles. Whole foods don't require nutrition labels, so the best nutrition label is no nutrition label at all. My definition of a whole food: 1. Whole foods are single-ingredient plant or animal foods that can be found in nature. An egg, a peach, a fish. 2. Whole foods are perishable. Good food goes bad. And 3. whole foods require little to no processing to be safely edible. Peeling, chopping, and cooking are fine. By following these brain food rules, we arrive at a new understanding of how to build a brain-healthy diet from the inside out. If we follow these brain food rules to their logical conclusion, we don't arrive at a Mediterranean diet because Mediterranean diets require grains, legumes, and dairy products, allow substantial quantities of refined carbohydrates, and encourage alcohol. We don't arrive at a vegan diet because vegan diets lack animal foods and therefore can't provide all essential nutrients without relying on legumes, fortified processed foods, and supplements. The broadest dietary pattern that comes closest to satisfying these brain food rules is the paleo diet, because it emphasizes animal foods and excludes grains, legumes, dairy, refined carbohydrates, alcohol, and modern processed foods. If you have insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes, you may need to follow a lower carbohydrate version of the paleo diet, or even transition to a ketogenic diet. If you have significant damage to your gut health or immune system, you may have lost the ability to tolerate a wide variety of plant foods, in which case you may even benefit from a plant-free carnivore diet, at least as a temporary discovery strategy. In your accompanying PDF, you'll find an illustration summarizing the core principles of a brain-healthy diet, which are simply these. The core of your diet should be non-dairy animal foods, supplemented with fruits and vegetables as tolerated. Dairy, nuts, seeds, and legumes offer nutritional value, but are risky. Grains, sugar, vegetable oils, alcohol, and ultra-processed foods are best avoided entirely. Standard and quiet paleo diets. The paleo dietary pattern was first popularized by Colorado State University professor Dr. Lauren Cordain. Paleo is short for Paleolithic, which means Stone Age. A paleo diet attempts to mirror the way our hunter-gatherer ancestors ate for nearly 2 million years prior to the dawn of monocrop agriculture and the domestication of animals. Simply put, the paleo diet is the original human diet. As Professor Cordain wrote in his book, The Paleo Diet, our genes are well adapted to a world in which all the food eaten daily had to be hunted, fished, or gathered from the natural environment. The paleo diet permits meat, seafood, poultry, eggs, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. Whole plant and animal foods that require little to no processing to be safely edible. Of course, it's impossible to eat exactly the way our prehistoric ancestors did because the quality of our plant and animal foods has changed considerably since then. Following a paleo diet is less about eating exactly the same foods our ancient relatives would have eaten, and more about avoiding the foods they wouldn't have eaten. Grains, legumes, dairy products, industrially processed food products, refined carbohydrates, vegetable oils, alcohol, and added sugars. Paleo diets haven't been studied as much as Mediterranean or ketogenic diets have, but the handful of quality studies that do exist indicate modest metabolic health benefits in comparison to several other dietary patterns. Paleo diets usually do not require special medical supervision and are appropriate for people of all ages. I'm not a child psychiatrist, but when parents ask me what they should feed their children for better mental health, I recommend beginning with a paleo eating pattern. Standard paleo, keto, and carnivore plans can all be very therapeutic, but for some, they won't bring enough relief. To maximize your chances of success, I've taken the standard paleo, ketogenic, and carnivore diets you may already be familiar with and made them even friendlier to your brain, gut, metabolism, and immune system. If you'd like to try a standard paleo, ketogenic, or carnivore diet, I've included some of my favorite resources in Appendix B to help you make the most of those plans. However, if you've already tried those approaches and they haven't brought you enough relief, or if you're new to the world of special diets and want to discover the dietary pattern that will work best for you as efficiently as possible, my quiet diet plans are here to help take the guesswork out of your journey. The quiet diet difference. While standard paleo, ketogenic, and carnivore diets go a long way toward fulfilling our brain food rules, they each fall short in ways that may make it harder for you to achieve your personal best, which is why I created quiet paleo, quiet keto, and quiet carnivore alternatives for you to explore. I call these plans quiet because they're uniquely modified to be quieter on your metabolism, gut, thyroid, immune system, nervous system, and mitochondria, allowing them to deliver benefits beyond standard paleo, ketogenic, and carnivore diets. What makes quiet diet plans different from standard paleo, keto, and carnivore plans is that all three quiet diets lower glucose and insulin levels, reduce inflammation and oxidative stress, minimize plant toxins and anti-nutrients, eliminate common food sensitivity culprits, and emphasize gut-friendly foods that are easier to digest. The quiet diet approach can be particularly helpful if you are struggling with irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS, chronic pain or fibromyalgia, migraine headaches, chronic fatigue, stubborn or mysterious mental or physical health issues, or food sensitivities. Food intolerances are increasingly common, affecting up to 1 in 5 people in industrialized countries. The cells lining the insides of your intestines work together with your microbiome and your immune system to decide which food molecules should be absorbed and which ones should be rejected. If any element of this sophisticated system becomes compromised, you could develop abnormal reactions to foods. There are no definitive explanations as to why so many of us are losing our ability to tolerate a wide variety of foods, but several compelling theories exist. One is the concept of toxicant-induced loss of tolerance, or TILT. The idea behind TILT is that exposure to environmental toxins such as pesticides, petrochemical solvents and fumes, and microplastics, all of which have become prevalent only since World War II, weakens the immune system, making us exquisitely sensitive to foods and chemicals we used to be able to tolerate. Other potential culprits include antibiotics that deplete our microbiome, food additives such as emulsifiers like polysorbate 80, lecithin, xanthan gum, carrageenan, and many others that cause intestinal inflammation, and endocrine disruptors, substances that upset hormonal balance, function, and rhythm, such as plastics, soy phytoestrogens, and pesticides. Regardless of the original cause, growing evidence suggests that people with food allergies and intolerances are more likely to have increased intestinal permeability, also known as leaky gut, gaps in the tight junctions between intestinal cells that are supposed to prevent undigested food particles and other unwanted substances from crossing into the bloodstream. If these sneak into the circulation where they don't belong, your immune system could view them as foreign intruders and mount an inflammatory reaction against them. In the case of true food allergies, even a tiny quantity of food can trigger the body to immediately release a massive amount of histamine, a powerful neurotransmitter that can cause hives, throat swelling, wheezing, and other familiar allergy symptoms that can even be life-threatening in some cases. Food sensitivity symptoms, on the other hand, are far less dramatic, less specific, and more diverse. Food sensitivity reactions may include any number of frustrating symptoms such as acne, asthma, indigestion, fatigue, migraine, joint pain, bloating, stomachache, ankle swelling, brain fog, anxiety, insomnia, and depression. Symptoms can take hours to days to appear, and their severity depends on the quantity of food you eat. So small amounts of food may not bother you unless you eat it very frequently. Because symptoms can be so variable and so vague, many people with food sensitivities don't realize they have them. If you suffer from environmental or chemical sensitivities, or a diagnostically perplexing mystery syndrome such as fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, or irritable bowel syndrome, you could very well have unrecognized food sensitivities. Unfortunately, despite what home test kit manufacturers claim, there are no reliable tests for food sensitivities. So the only way to identify a sensitivity is by eliminating the suspected ingredient from your diet for a while as an experiment. In other words, when in doubt, cut it out. You could remove one food at a time and then reintroduce it after a few weeks, but this elimination diet strategy can be tedious, especially since it's unusual to have just one food sensitivity. Given that these issues now affect so many people, all 3 quiet diets are free of the most common food sensitivity culprits to spare you the frustration of the trial and error elimination process. The quiet paleo diet. While the standard paleo diet is a wonderful starting point for any brain-healthy diet, it may not sit well with you if you have gut health issues, food intolerances, or autoimmune diseases because it permits nuts and seeds, as well as the entire rainbow of fruits and vegetables, several of which can be problematic. The other potential drawback of standard paleo is that it can be too high in carbohydrate for the majority of us who now have insulin resistance because it allows unlimited quantities of fruits and starchy vegetables. I created Quiet Paleo to address both of these potential issues. A unique feature of Quiet Paleo is that it limits fruits and vegetables to my signature list of kinder, gentler plant foods that are easier to digest, lower in toxins and anti-nutrients, and have a lower glycemic index. For example, Quiet Paleo excludes cassava, flaxseed, and all nightshades, except carefully prepared potatoes, because these contain neurotoxins. While standard paleo plans place no ceiling on carbohydrate, Quiet Paleo limits total daily carbohydrate from low glycemic fruits and vegetables to about 90 grams per day to support lower, more stable glucose and insulin levels. If you find that your blood sugar and insulin levels still run too high on Quiet Paleo, I recommend you consider transitioning to a ketogenic diet. Standard and quiet ketogenic diets. The ketogenic diet isn't a dietary pattern that comes with a food list. It is a metabolic plan that comes with macronutrient rules. Low carbohydrate, moderate protein, high fat. This means you can eat any foods you wish so long as you adhere to those rules and reach therapeutic ketosis. It also means that ketogenic diets can vary tremendously in quality depending on your food choices. In other words, all ketogenic diets energize your brain because they shift you into ketosis, but not all of them will properly nourish or protect your brain. Most ketogenic plans include rich dairy products such as heavy cream and butter because these are delicious and easy ways to meet the high fat requirement. But dairy is also a common cause of inflammation and can raise appetite and insulin levels, resulting in unwanted weight gain. Many ketogenic diets also rely on risky processed staples such as salad dressings made with vegetable oils or keto-friendly treats like cookies made with nut flours, sweeteners, and whey protein. I understand the appeal of these items, but keep in mind that optimal brain health isn't just about ketones. For example, If you are following a ketogenic diet that falls short on nutrients or contains inflammatory ingredients, you may not experience much in the way of mental health benefits. These common shortcomings of most ketogenic diets led me to create the Quiet Keto Plan. The difference between Quiet Keto and other ketogenic diets is that Quiet Keto is based on the Quiet Paleo food list, so it excludes dairy, ultra-processed ingredients, alcohol, and the most irritating plant foods. In short, Quiet Keto is simply the Quiet Paleo plan minus the higher carbohydrate fruits and vegetables, giving you the best of both worlds. Like all ketogenic diets, Quiet Keto is metabolically quiet because it lowers glucose and insulin levels beautifully. But by focusing on low toxicity whole plant and animal foods, it is safer and more nutritious than many other ketogenic diets, and therefore more likely to improve your overall health and sense of well-being. However, if you have compromised gut health or immune health, or if you suffer from multiple food sensitivity syndromes, Quiet Keto may still contain more plant foods than you can comfortably tolerate. Therefore, if you still don't experience the results you're hoping for on Quiet Keto, you may want to consider trying a carnivore diet. Standard and quiet carnivore diets. The term carnivore diet has come to mean different things to different people, but the general philosophy behind this approach is that the fewer plants we eat, the healthier we will be. So carnivore diets are either extremely low in plant foods or contain no plant foods at all. Carnivore diets are naturally ultra low in carbohydrate and relatively high in fat. So most carnivore diets are also ketogenic diets. Carnivore diets range from narrow beef-only plans to broad plans that allow all animal foods, including dairy and eggs. Some versions of the carnivore diet even include spices, coffee, and alcohol, all of which come from plants. Quiet carnivore is completely plant-free. Its very simple menu allows meat, seafood, poultry, plain broths, and salt, but excludes dairy, eggs, and processed meats, because these are the animal foods most likely to bother sensitive individuals. Chart your course. The most efficient way to discover the diet that will work best for you is by following the Quiet Diet Roadmap, which begins with Quiet Paleo. This is the strategy I recommend to most people. However, if switching immediately to Quiet Paleo sounds overwhelming, simply take whatever diet you're eating right now and make one healthy change at a time. It will probably take longer to achieve the results you're hoping for, but if a stepwise approach is easier for you, you're more likely to be successful in the long term. Here are the most impactful single steps you can try. No added sugars. No liquid calories. For example, no smoothies, no sugar-sweetened beverages, milks, cream, or coffee lighteners. No grains. No alcohol. No snacking between meals. No fast food. No vegetable oils. Fasting for 16 hours every night. Recognize that if you choose the one step at a time approach, even though every step you take is good for your health, any one of these alone may not be sufficient for you to notice significant improvements in how you feel. Be patient and keep moving forward at your own pace. Continue to make healthy changes until you can really feel a difference. The Quiet Diet Roadmap. The goal of the Quiet Diet process is to find the least restrictive and most enjoyable diet that will support your good mental and physical health. You'll find a diagram of the Quiet Diet Roadmap in your accompanying PDF. The roadmap starts with Quiet Paleo, and then may or may not lead you on to Quiet Keto or Quiet Carnivore, depending on your needs. These special elimination diets are designed to help you figure out as quickly as possible whether your mental, and physical health symptoms are rooted in food or metabolism issues without having to go through the frustrating trial and error process of removing one potential food culprit at a time. If you feel better on one of these plans, you can then try expanding your diet to discover where your safe outer limits are. Everyone start here, quiet paleo, for 2 to 6 weeks. Goals: to improve the overall nutritional quality of your diet, to reduce inflammation by focusing on foods that are gentler to your gut, brain, and immune system, to lower and stabilize your glucose and insulin levels, but without going into ketosis, and to serve as a 2-week metabolic stepping stone to quiet keto. Follow quiet paleo for at least 6 weeks, then reassess your metabolism, your mental health, and your physical health. At that point, if your blood sugar is stable and in a healthy range, and you've noticed improvements in your physical and mental health, you can either continue quiet paleo long-term, or you can try expanding your food choices to see if you can tolerate a more varied paleo diet. However, if your blood sugar is unstable or runs too high on quiet paleo, or if you still aren't feeling as well as you'd like, then I would encourage you to consider switching to quiet keto. Even if you already know you'd like to try a ketogenic or carnivore diet, you should follow quiet paleo for at least 2 weeks first. This is very important because diving headfirst from a standard diet that may contain hundreds of grams of carbohydrate per day into a ketogenic or carnivore diet that contains 20 grams of carbohydrate per day or less is a huge shock to the system that can temporarily cause unnecessary misery and could even be dangerous, particularly if you're taking certain medications or have certain pre-existing medical conditions. Refer to Chapter 18. Since quiet paleo starts at 90 grams of carbohydrate, it serves as a metabolic stepping stone that eases your glucose and insulin levels down more gradually, which will make transitioning to a ketogenic or carnivore diet much more comfortable. Step 2. Quiet keto, 6 to 12 weeks. Goals: to bring glucose and insulin levels down low enough for you to enter ketosis and long enough for you to adapt to ketosis, and to explore how being in ketosis affects your mental health. After 6 weeks on quiet keto, reassess your metabolic, physical, and mental health. If you're satisfied with your results, you can either continue quiet keto long-term or try gradually expanding your food choices, as I'll describe shortly, to see if you can tolerate a more varied whole foods ketogenic diet while still maintaining the benefits of quiet keto. If quiet keto hasn't helped you enough, or at all, you may have multiple food intolerances, in which case you could try quiet carnivore. Step 3. Quiet carnivore for 4 to 6 weeks. Carnivore diets are also usually ketogenic diets, so please listen to Chapter 18 before you begin to make sure a ketogenic diet is right for you. If you're fast-tracking from quiet paleo, I recommend following quiet carnivore for 6 weeks. If you're coming to quiet carnivore from quiet keto, you will already have been in ketosis for quite some time, so 4 weeks should be long enough to get a feel for the potential benefits of this plant-free protocol. Reassess your metabolic and mental health at either the 4-week or 6-week mark, as the case may be. If you're doing well, you can either continue quiet carnivore or experiment with expanding your food choices. How to expand your diet. If you feel better on quiet paleo, quiet keto, or quiet carnivore, but you're curious to see if you can tolerate a wider variety of foods, try reintroducing one new food type at a time to find your safe outer limit. For example, if you do well on quiet paleo but miss nuts, try eating some nuts every day for 7 days to see how you feel. If that goes well, you can move on to the next curiosity experiment when you feel ready. You can dabble in cured meats, greater quantities of cruciferous vegetables, seeds, or a wider variety of spices in any order you like. Keep a food and symptom journal to track your reactions. Identifying foods that make you feel worse doesn't necessarily mean you have to cut them out of your life forever. It's simply information that gives you more control over how you feel from day to day. If you're blessed with a healthy metabolism and a robust constitution, you may be able to tolerate a wider variety of plant and animal foods. So when you're expanding your diet, where should you draw the line? I recommend that all human beings draw the line at what we'll call brain-healthy paleo. Enjoy meat, seafood, poultry, eggs, fruits, vegetables, excluding cassava and all nightshades except carefully prepared potatoes, nuts, seeds, except perhaps flax seeds, herbs, and spices. Continue to periodically monitor your after-meal blood sugar, fasting insulin, and fasting triglycerides. If any of these rise out of the healthy range, reduce your carbohydrate intake until you find your sweet spot. Take care when expanding your diet to reintroduce foods with patience and with purpose so that you can more accurately and honestly assess how they make you feel. When relaxing a diet plan, it's easy to fall back into old habits and lose touch with your goals. What if the quiet diet program doesn't work? If none of these plans helps you, then your symptoms probably aren't diet-related. However, I've worked with hundreds of patients and can count on one hand the number of people who haven't experienced at least partial benefit from improving the nutritional and metabolic quality of their diet using these principles. So chances are excellent that you will benefit too. If you don't improve enough or don't improve at all, I would still recommend that you continue to honor brain-healthy diet principles by following a paleo diet customized to your carbohydrate tolerance so that your glucose and insulin levels stay in a healthy range. This way, you will protect yourself from developing common diet-related mental and physical health problems in the future. Chapter 17. Quiet Paleo. We've established that the first step toward changing your mind is to change your diet to a personalized paleo pattern. And this chapter will show you exactly how to do that. But before you begin, it's important to prepare yourself for the journey, both medically and psychologically, by taking stock of your mental and physical health, clarifying your goals, and setting yourself up for success. Measure your mental health. In Appendix A of your accompanying PDF, you'll find links to simple questionnaires to assess yourself for ADHD, depression, mania, anxiety, OCD, food addiction, eating disorders, and cognitive impairment. Choose the questionnaires that apply to your situation, fill them out, and tuck them away. If you're not sure which ones to choose, fill them all out. 6 weeks after you change your diet, without looking at your original questionnaires first, fill out a fresh set of questionnaires, and then compare them to your first set. Most people are pleasantly surprised to see how many things have improved in such a short period of time. Measure your metabolic health. Test yourself for signs of insulin resistance. Refer back to the list of insulin resistance tests in Chapter 8. You don't need to do every test on the list. Just choose the ones that are easiest for you or your doctor to obtain. Here are the metabolic tests I recommend for everyone. Free and easy tests are the waist-to-height ratio and blood pressure. The inexpensive blood tests I recommend are a fasting lipid panel, also known as a cholesterol test. You'll need this to calculate your triglyceride to HDL ratio, fasting total insulin, fasting glucose, and hemoglobin A1C. If your clinician is hesitant to order these tests for you, you can order the tests yourself through private direct-to-consumer laboratory services. Self-ordered tests aren't covered by health insurance, but each of the tests I just recommended costs $30 or less even without insurance coverage. If you live in the United States and have a LabCorp testing location near you, you can save money and support a good cause by using ownyourlabs.com, a service established by cholesterol scientist Dave Feldman. A portion of the proceeds go to the Citizen Science Foundation. If your results show many areas that need improvement, don't be discouraged. Many markers of insulin resistance, such as high glucose, high insulin levels, and high triglyceride levels, can improve substantially in just a few weeks using the dietary strategies in these chapters. Accept where you are right now without judgment and trust the process. In addition to laboratory tests, I recommend checking your own glucose levels at home for at least a week before changing your diet, and then for at least the first 10 days of any dietary change. Revisit Chapter 7 for detailed information about home glucose monitoring and healthy glucose ranges. As a reminder, one way to measure your blood sugar is with a fingerstick blood glucose meter. Many choices exist, and they're inexpensive. If you think you'll ultimately progress to a ketogenic diet, I recommend purchasing one meter that measures both glucose and ketones. I use the Keto Mojo GK Plus blood glucose and ketone meter. The best way to follow your glucose levels is with a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM. CGMs are more expensive than fingerstick meters, but they're painless and give you more information. CGM models, features, and prices are constantly evolving, so research current options before you buy or ask your healthcare provider for recommendations. Consider additional laboratory tests. Since insulin resistance isn't the only reversible root cause of mental health problems, I also recommend several additional laboratory tests to look for other common culprits, including inflammation, certain nutrient deficiencies such as B12 and iron deficiency, and certain autoimmune conditions such as celiac disease and thyroid disease. Most people don't need extensive, specialized, or expensive tests. A few simple, carefully selected tests will usually suffice. You'll find a list of the laboratory tests I find most useful in Appendix A of your accompanying PDF. For personalized testing recommendations, please consult your healthcare provider. Consider food sensitivities. Since there is no laboratory test capable of diagnosing food sensitivities, you could have them without knowing it. As discussed, food sensitivities can cause a variety of perplexing symptoms that may come and go. In your accompanying PDF, you will find a food intolerance symptom checklist that asks you to place a check mark next to any symptoms you may experience, such as bloating, brain fog, or headaches. As you embark on your quiet diet voyage, you can refer back to this checklist to see if any of your symptoms have improved along the way. If you suspect you have food sensitivities, keep a food and symptom journal to look for connections between what you eat and how you feel. What's your why? Before you change your diet, take time to reflect and identify your personal motivations. Why do you feel a change is needed? Why now? Describe in as much detail as you can how you have been feeling lately, both emotionally and physically, and then make a list of the mental health and physical health symptoms you hope to improve by changing your diet. Making a voice or video recording that you can listen to again 6 weeks after you've changed your diet can be especially powerful because it captures your tone, energy, and attitude in ways that writing can't. Next, write down or record how you wish you could feel, and be as specific as you can. Then divide your wish list into short-term goals, such as, I wish I felt more energetic, and long-term goals, such as, I wish I could stop my antidepressant. Focus on the short-term goals for now. UK-based clinical psychologist Dr. Jen Unwin and her husband Dr. David Unwin, a general practitioner who specializes in using low-carbohydrate diets to treat obesity and type 2 diabetes, created a simple 4-step process called GRIN, G-R-I-N, to help people turn health wishes into realities. G is for goals. Choose up to 3 short-term personal goals. Not your family's goals, not your doctor's goals, your goals. What difference would achieving these goals make in your life? How do you imagine your life would change? Be as specific as you can in envisioning your preferred future. For example, one patient told me she wanted to feel less irritable in hopes that her grandchildren would be more interested in spending time with her. R is for resources. What resources can you draw upon to help you achieve your goals? We've all accomplished difficult things before. What other challenges have you faced in your life, and how did you manage to conquer them? Make a list of your strengths. Not feeling positive about yourself lately? Ask others what strengths they see in you. I is for increments. If overhauling your diet all at once feels overwhelming, start small. Identify one change you feel ready to make, and once you've accomplished that one, set your sights on the next one. If you need ideas, there's a list of healthy changes in the previous chapter. N is for noticing. As you try changing your habits, notice your successes, no matter how small they may seem. At the end of each day, ask yourself, what went well today? None of us progresses toward change in a straight line. Mistakes are a normal part of the learning process. Focus on the positive and celebrate every little victory. Don't go it alone. In your accompanying PDF, you'll find a detailed Quiet Paleo food list, as well as sample Quiet Paleo meal plans and recipes to set you on your way. But before you begin, be sure to contact your medical and mental health care providers to let them know you want to try a new way of eating. If they're supportive of the idea, they can help by discussing your health goals, ordering lab tests, meeting with you periodically to monitor your progress, and making any necessary medication adjustments that may be needed along the way. Medical support is particularly important if you decide to try a low-carbohydrate diet of any kind. Refer to Chapter 18. Whereas changing to a quiet paleo plan containing about 90 grams of carbohydrate per day is medically safe for most people. However, if your current diet contains hundreds of grams of refined carbohydrate per day, and you are in fragile health or taking medication for high blood pressure, high blood sugar, or heart disease, please do consult with your healthcare provider. A substantial drop in your carbohydrate intake may affect your blood sugar or blood pressure and may require that your medication dosages be lowered. Identify sources of social support, such as family members, friends, or coworkers who can cheer you on or even join you on the journey for their own health reasons. Online and in-person support groups can greatly increase your chances of success. If you need help finding medical or emotional support, refer to Appendix B in your accompanying PDF. Quiet Paleo Food List. Meat, seafood, poultry, and eggs. All fresh or freshly frozen meat, seafood, poultry, and eggs are permitted. Meat, seafood, and poultry must be free of starchy coatings, thickened gravies, sweetened sauces, sweetened marinades, and sugary rubs. Minimize aged and processed meats, such as cold cuts, bacon, aged beef, jerky, cured sausages, and smoked salmon, as they can be high in histamine. Refer to Chapter 19. Beverages. Water and unsweetened seltzer, flavored with natural fruit essences if you like. You can make your own flavored infused waters, seltzers, and iced teas using citrus, small pieces of fruit, mint, basil, or cucumber, and refrigerating overnight. Unsweetened coffee and tea. Refer to Chapter 20 for notes about caffeine. How much should you eat? Now that you know what to eat, it's time to think about how much to eat. Food quantity is just as important as food quality because overeating or undereating can make even the healthiest diet unhealthy. Fortunately, it's harder to overeat quiet paleo foods because they are naturally satisfying and non-addictive. But if you have a history of food addiction or food restriction, you may have a tendency to overeat or undereat no matter what plan you follow. Protein, fat, and calorie requirements vary from person to person, and some people can safely handle more carbohydrate than others. So understanding how to tailor your macronutrients to your specific needs is the key to success with any diet. In your accompanying PDF, you'll find a diagram summarizing how to think about macronutrient goals, which is that I recommend starting at 0.6 grams of protein per pound ideal body weight, customizing carbohydrate to your personal tolerance, and then the rest of daily calories should come from fat. I'll walk you through some simple calculations shortly to help you estimate your personal macronutrient requirements, but if you prefer not to do this yourself, you can consult with a nutrition professional to personalize your plan. If you have a healthy relationship with food and you've always easily maintained a stable, healthy weight, you can probably trust your appetite and may not need to intentionally manage your protein, fat, and calorie intake when following quiet paleo. But it's still helpful to have a sense of what your healthy target ranges should be. You can download a free quiet diet macronutrient guide from my website, Diagnosis Diet, that lists how many grams of protein, fat, and carbohydrate are in each food, but I've provided some ballpark estimates to get you started. In your accompanying PDF, you'll find the approximate carbohydrate counts for commonly consumed fruits and vegetables. For example, 1 cup of strawberries contains about 10 grams of carbohydrate. 1 apple contains about 25 grams of carbohydrate, and 1 potato contains about 35 grams of carbohydrate. Step 1. Prioritize protein. To estimate your protein needs, you'll first need to estimate your ideal body weight by using these simple formulas. Women, assuming medium frame and average muscle mass, 100 pounds for the first 5 feet of height, plus 5 pounds for every inch over 5 feet. For example, if you are 5 feet 3 inches tall, your estimated ideal body weight would be 100 pounds plus 15 pounds, or 115 pounds. If you're under 5 feet tall, subtract 2 pounds per inch. Men, assuming medium frame, average muscle mass, 106 pounds for the first 5 feet of height, plus 6 pounds for every inch over 5 feet. For example, if you are 5 feet 10 inches tall, your estimated ideal body weight would be 106 pounds plus 60 pounds, or 166 pounds. Note that ideal body weight is an imperfect concept based on gender, height, and frame. If your estimated ideal body weight looks too high or low for you, simply use your own best estimate of what you believe your ideal body weight should be. Next, use your ideal body weight to estimate your daily protein requirements. Protein recommendations vary widely among experts, from between 0.4 and 0.75 grams of protein per pound ideal body weight. I recommend using 0.6 grams of protein per pound ideal body weight as your starting point. For example, if your ideal body weight is 125 pounds, multiply 125 by 0.6 to arrive at your estimated daily protein target, which would be 75 grams of protein per day. Tip: 1 large egg contains 6 grams of protein. Most cuts of meat, seafood, and poultry contain between 5 and 8 grams of protein per ounce, depending on how lean or fatty they are, because lean meats contain more protein per ounce. Step 2. Customize carbohydrate. Monitoring your own blood sugar levels will help you figure out how much carbohydrate you can safely tolerate. Carbohydrate tolerance varies greatly from one person to the next, But most of us now have some degree of insulin resistance and can't safely process the amount of carbohydrate in a so-called normal diet. The U.S. dietary guidelines recommend that 45 to 65% of your calories come from carbohydrate, which on a 2,000 calorie per day diet translates to between 225 and 325 grams of carbohydrate per day. This is why quiet paleo starts at about 90 grams of low glycemic carbohydrate per day. Spread your carbohydrates out over the course of the day to minimize the risk of unhealthy glucose and insulin spikes. For example, if you eat 3 meals a day, simply include about 30 grams of carbohydrate from the quiet paleo kinder, gentler fruits and vegetables list in each meal. This will usually work out to about 1 serving of non-starchy vegetables, plus about 1 serving of a starchy vegetable or 1 piece of fruit per meal. Unlike ketogenic diets, you don't have to be precise about your carbohydrate content. Non-starchy vegetables such as asparagus, cucumbers, and lettuce are very low in carbohydrate, so you can enjoy a serving of these at every meal if you like. Quiet paleo begins at 90 grams of carbohydrate per day to prevent you from going into ketosis. However, if you have a significant degree of insulin resistance, 90 grams may be too high for you, so keep an eye on your glucose readings to be sure your after-meal glucose readings stay in a healthy range. Home glucose monitoring will be the key to discovering your personal sweet spot. If your glucose rises out of the healthy range, reduce your daily carbohydrate intake by 5 to 10 grams per meal and then reassess. Do not go below 60 grams per day while following quiet paleo because you might enter ketosis, which isn't the goal of this phase of your discovery process. Step 3. Fat is flexible. The remainder of your calories should come from fat, and the amount you should eat will depend on how much energy, calories, you need. Human protein requirements fall within a relatively narrow range, and most of you will need to keep carbohydrate fairly low to achieve the results you're looking for. So fat is where there's the most room for flexibility. I recommend you avoid counting calories or fat grams during the first 6 weeks of quiet paleo and let your appetite be your guide. In other words, begin by eating as much fat as you need to feel satisfied. It's common to feel hungrier than usual in the beginning of your journey as your metabolism shifts gears, so it may feel like you're overeating fat at first. But once your glucose and insulin levels quiet down, your appetite will usually quiet down too. If you're losing weight that you don't want or need to lose, you're losing weight too fast, or you're hungry between meals, increasing your fat intake will often solve the problem. It's hard to overeat fat on a quiet paleo diet because it's free of dairy and nuts, the types of fat people find most addictive. But if you're gaining unwanted weight, you may need to eventually cut back on your fat intake. Keep it simple or get creative. The beauty of quiet paleo is that you don't need to intentionally limit protein, fat, or calories because it's not meant to be a diet. It's meant to be a healthy way of life. All you need to do is stick to the approved food list, keep your fruit and starchy vegetable intake to 1 serving per meal, and monitor your blood sugar. If you enjoy cooking and want creative inspiration, you can find meal plans and recipes for quiet paleo in Chapter 21 of your accompanying PDF. But creating a quiet paleo meal can be as simple as choosing a source of animal protein, adding some non-starchy vegetables cooked in fat or drizzled with oil, and having a piece of fruit for dessert. Here's an example of how easy it can be to put meals together. The following sample menu provides 74 grams of protein. Breakfast: a 3-egg vegetable omelet, 18 grams of protein, cooked in 1 to 2 tablespoons of duck fat, and 1 apple. Lunch: a salad made of kinder, gentler vegetables, with olive oil, lemon juice, avocado, and herbs, topped with 5 ounces of grilled salmon for 30 grams of protein, and 1 cup of blueberries for dessert. Dinner: 2 roasted chicken legs, that's 26 grams of protein, 1 cup of steamed zucchini, and a baked sweet potato, topped with natural juices from the roasted chicken. Most people will benefit to some extent from this relaxed plan, but you may eventually need to make adjustments to suit your metabolism. If your blood sugar and insulin levels are in good control, but you're gaining unwanted weight, cut your fat intake down a bit. If your blood sugar runs too high after meals, cut your carbohydrate intake down a bit, without going below 60 grams of carbohydrate per day. If your blood sugar still runs high at 60 grams of carbohydrate per day, or if your mental health hasn't improved enough, I would encourage you to consider a ketogenic diet.